So this is another very important part of chapter 7, which is the character class methods. So these methods here are a little bit more unique just because I mean, with the other methods, you know, that we've gone over so far, for most of them they're going to have this kind of syntax where, okay, you um, come up, you declare a string regularly, and the name of your variable in this case is just a var, or short for variable. So up to this point, you just have kind of this very normal syntax of, if you want to perform a string method or some kind of string manipulation, it usually goes with um, the name of your variable first, dot, and we'll just go with equals, um, well, let's redo this. Let's come up with another string. And then we'll go with var2, and we'll say that it equals high. So up to this point, you'll have, basically what I'm trying to do here is kind of print out whether it's true or false, and I'll kind of explain that in a little bit. So up to this point, the way we've been using the syntax for certain string methods is you have the name of your variable. In this case, we'll go with var, and then we have equals, and you go ahead and put in the second variable that you want to compare it to. So kind of ignoring this part here just because it might be throwing you off a little bit, but what I'm trying to do is basically print out whether this is true or false. So when it comes to coding, it's really important to break things up into pieces and to understand what each thing here is doing. So just because I want to make sure this is clear for y'all and y'all aren't getting confused with how I'm using the equals method in this case, is first I just declared a string very regularly, very basic, your data type, variable name, and then what I want my variable to be equal to. Same thing down here, data type, my variable name, and then what I want it to be equal to. And so then here I want to just print out a certain something that I'm doing with these variables. And from the introduction of chapter 7 and some of the other methods, you should know that if I'm going to perform an equals method here in regards to strings, what I'm basically doing is getting a true or false value. So this is going to say, hey, does hello equal hi? And it doesn't. So this whole method here is going to return a false value, and it'll, with the system out print, it's going to say, okay, we are going to print out a false value because hello, which is represented by var, is not equal to var2. And that's basically that. That's just something, I know it's not specific exactly to this chapter what I'm explaining. I guess the reason why I'm really breaking down what I'm doing here is because sometimes people can get very tripped up by how they see certain code, or they see something that hasn't been done before and they just kind of overthink it, or they think it's something just out of the ordinary. But in this case, this is what I'm trying to do. I just want to print out whether this thing is true or false. Oop. Okay, so it should return false up here. Yeah, false. Okay, but the main point being is that this has been the syntax, just this little part I'm highlighting here. This has been the syntax for string methods up to this point. Like I said, you have your variable name first, dot the name of your method, and then whatever parameter you need to put in here. What we're about to go over with character class methods, it's a bit more unique just because of the following reason. And like I said, when it comes to chapter 7, this is just more, this chapter is just very applicable. It's very repetitive and redundant to what it is that the chapter is really about, which is just knowing how to use these methods in, certain situations that you're going to have to solve on a quiz or on an exam. So, it's this chapter is really not that conceptual. It's very more technical. You have to practice. Excuse me. You have to practice these things or these methods in order to understand what the chapter is really about. So, with character class methods, what you're basically doing is same things. You have some strings. You want to manipulate them. You want to check certain stuff, and that's kind of the whole point of all these string methods. And we're going to go ahead and use these two again. So this is what we're going to do here. This is how character class methods are unique. So for the first method that we'll go over, let me go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint that is working now. Okay, so this is a very, 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 very important diagram from your book. Everything is fair game when it comes to an exam or a quiz, especially if you have Cooper. And I'll tell you right now, I did not think we were going to get quizzed or tested over these, and we sure did. So I highly recommend that you understand these or put them on your cheat sheet. But the first method that we're going to go over is this one here, is uppercase. And just basic descriptions, it tests whether a character is uppercase, and that's very key. A character, it's not testing whether the whole thing is uppercase, so don't get that confused. And just to some context clues that show you that it is character, it is coming from the character class. And by now you should know a character is a single letter, and then a string is a whole a whole string. So just understand that when you're using these methods, you're testing individual characters. And here it just says test if your character is uppercase. And I guess we can just go to the is lowercase, test if it's lowercase. And then you have these other ones that are very, all kind of related. Is digit, is letter or digit, is white space. And we'll get into that as the tutorial goes on and I go over different methods. And something very important is that is methods return Boolean values. Two methods return a converted character. And that is, I think, it simplifies these methods a lot more, just because recognizing, oh, this is an is uppercase method, this is a to lowercase method. It lets you know what you're doing, So yeah, that's kind of it for that. Definitely work with this character class, put it on your cheat sheet, understand exactly how to use these methods. And like I said, everything is fair game, so understanding understanding those methods are very important. And we'll go ahead and just do an is method really quickly, because it's probably one of the easier ones. It's just returning a Boolean value. And what we'll do here is, again, I'm gonna kind of get very technical with how I'm doing certain things of code. So if we know that the character class method is uppercase character class method returns a Boolean value, and I want to check or use that method, I would have to do something along these lines here. And hopefully this doesn't throw y'all off too much. So I'm going to declare a Boolean data type. I'm going to call it my check, just because I'm checking whether something is true or false. My check, so it's a Boolean data type. My check is the name of the method, and this is where it gets very different. This is where things kind of switch up from the way we've seen the syntax for other string methods. Since this is a character class, we're going to do character dot is uppercase, and then since we are working with a character class here, so you're in the character class, just a brief insight to it. It's a predefined class in Java that you can use because it's been there since Java's creation. So we're gonna say, hey, I'm gonna use the character class, and I'm gonna call this method here that's in the character class is uppercase. And for this example, I want to check this first variable, my var. I want to say, okay, let's use this character class, let's use the isUpperCase method, and I want to check var at character at, I hate these parentheses. And let's check if the third character is uppercase. So in hello, obviously, and hopefully by now y'all know that the character at method starts at 0, so then it would be my h is 0, e is 1, l is 2, and the second l is 3. So it's going to check the second l, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and break this down again now that we've gotten to this point, because I feel, especially throughout the semester I took Java, this stuff really tripped people out. So again, very basic stuff up here. Stuff we've seen ever since the beginning of the course. Here in the myCheck variable, again, the reason this is a data type Boolean is because this whole method here is going to return a true or false. And that, again, I stressed it in the PowerPoint, is that is methods return Booleans, to methods return or convert a character to an uppercase or lowercase, right? So I'm basically telling my program at this moment, hey, you're going to perform this thing, and this thing is going to return true or false, and we're going to store that true or false into this variable called myCheck. And since it is a true or false answer that I'm receiving, I have to declare it as a Boolean. Okay, and I feel like I'm kind of sounding like a broken record, but I know there's plenty of people that are going to look at this stuff and they're just going to be so lost because they're not going to understand the logic of why the code is looking the way it does. So again, the last time I break it down, this whole operation here, this whole character dot is uppercase, this whole thing here is going to return true or false, and I created this myCheck variable and made it a data type Boolean because this variable is going to hold a true or false, so it has to be a Boolean. Okay, so yeah, and now to get deeper into the actual syntax here, this part here I know is definitely very confusing, but what you have to understand about this character dot whatever method, you know, kind of fill in the blank. You can use so many methods according to that 7-1 figure table. You know, here you can put to uppercase, to lowercase, is whatever. You know, like I said, you can use many methods. But the trick here is that you're always going to have this beginning syntax when dealing with the character class. So it'll be character dot whatever method, and then in here things are going to change and be a little bit more a lot different than the other methods, because the parameter that needs to go in between these parentheses is going to be your variable name and then char at whatever position, and again, the char at method starts at 0 whenever you're dealing with strings. Okay, so again, the char at method starts at 0, and in this case we're doing var, so we're doing char at 3, so it'll be h is 0, e is 1, l is 2, and the second l is 3. So this is what we're saying. We're saying for variable, or for var dot char at 3, check if it is uppercase. Okay, that's all we did here. That is the necessary parameter that we need to use in order for this whole syntax to work. Okay, and so then we'll go ahead and see if it's true or false, because this is what we're checking. We're checking if this is going to be a true or false answer. And if you've been following and seeing how I'm breaking this down, you'll know that we're going to get a false. So system out print, and we'll go ahead and get a little bit fancy this time. We're going to say the character at position 3 is ... space plus my check, right? So put a space there. All right, so let's go ahead and see what we get, and we should get false. The character at position 3 is false. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch it up. We'll go ahead and say that, just go ahead and retype this out. I want to see character dot is uppercase, so we're still using the same method, and we're going to say for variable 2, I want to check the character at 0, and we'll go ahead and update this here. So it'll read the character at position 0 is. Okay, so now we're dealing with the second variable, and again, we started 0 with the char at method, so if we're starting at 0, we're actually checking this h here, and if you see this capital, it's a capital H. So we're saying, hey, character class dot is uppercase at variable 2 with the character at 0, and looks like we should get a true there. So this should read, the character at position 0 is true. Okay, so that right there is the whole kind of concept behind the character class. And again, the parameters that you use will change sometimes, but up to this point, this is pretty much a somewhat standard way to find, a certain it's kind of a standard way to track down certain characters and be able to test them whether they're true or false. This is a pretty good introduction to isUpperCase. Like I said, there's plenty of more methods, and again, I tried to break down the way I was coding certain things and doing certain things just so that you can get used to seeing code in many different forms and understanding the logic behind why, you know, why I made this a Boolean and why I maybe printed something out a certain way. Like I said, that's very important stuff because this class will get tedious and it'll throw things at you that maybe you haven't seen. So that's kind of it for the isUpperCase method, and we'll move on to different methods.